Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Beef Up Front podcast here on Pick Swap Media, continuing our NFL divisional preview series here. We already went through the NFC East. Today we'll be going through the NFC North, but before we get to that, just wanted to remind you guys of our sponsorship, Beef Up Front, as well as Pick Swap Media with the sportsdisplays.com. Sports Displays are the creators of their unique product, the Jersey Mount, which can be installed to any surface and is significantly cheaper than the hundreds of dollars it usually costs for this type of quality display. So make sure to check out that link in our description. Use that code PICKSWAP to get 10% off and free shipping. So help us out, help them out, and let us continue to grow the channel here at PickSwap Media. Like I said, we're going to be continuing today our NFL divisional preview. We're going through the NFC first. So like I said, did the NFC East. If you haven't checked out that episode, please do. Tonight we'll be getting into the NFC North, which is the Vikings, Bears, Lions, and Packers. So just like the NFC East video, I'm going to be giving my record prediction. I'm going to be breaking down the offense, defense, the head coach, two games to watch on the schedule, and a breakout player for this team. So without further ado, let's get started. I'm actually taking the Minnesota Vikings to win the NFC North this year. I think the Packers still have a good shot at making the playoffs. Don't get me wrong. They should be viewed as the favorite for the division still as long as Aaron Rodgers is there. But I think this is the year the Vikings kind of take that leap and become a more viable team in the playoffs under Kirk Cousins. I have them getting the number one spot in the NFC North, and that's good enough to get the 2 seed in the entire NFC. The Vikings going 12-5, 5-1 in the division. I think, like I said, this is the year that I think for them to strike and take down the Packers in the NFC North. And that's because of this offense with Kevin O'Connell running the show now. The former Rams offensive coordinator, I really like what he brings to the table and that his offensive scheme that he's going to be translating from his time working under Sean McVay. We know that's kind of like the Shanahan system as well from years before. So this was a team that was ran by a defensive coach for the past however many years Mike Zimmer was there, and they always run the ball to set up the pass. And with Dalvin Cook, that's not a bad idea, but we kind of saw that falter, I guess you could say, over the past few seasons, leading to the firing of Mike Zimmer and then the eventual hiring of Kevin O'Connell. I think with O'Connell coaching now, this is going to be a pass-first offense, but they're going to be able to still run the ball effectively, and he's going to be able to get the most out of Kirk Cousins and the entire group of playmakers on this team. Kirk has shrunk in the big moments. Don't get me wrong. This is a bold prediction, having them go in 12-5, 5-1 in the division, and the 2 seed. Kirk is going to have a really good year. And the jury's still out to see if he can step it up and be a big-time quarterback come those primetime games and the playoff games as well. But he has thrown for over 4,000 yards and at least 30 or more touchdowns in 3 out of his 4 years in Minnesota. So he had 1 year where I think it was like 37 yards and like 26 touchdowns. So this is a guy who puts up stats, and he's really productive no matter what. Justin Jefferson, a top 5 receiver in the league entering year 3. Only expect him to continue to get better. Adam Thielen, a great wide receiver too. He's getting a bit older, was a bit banged up at times last year. But when he's on the field, he's still a really productive player. And then we know I love Irv Smith at tight end. If you've heard my fantasy episode about the tight ends, I think he's in for a breakout year. And then you look at the backfield duo of Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison. It doesn't get much better than that throughout the rest of the NFC. And it has a high-level offensive playmakers at every level. Like you look at the receivers, the running backs, the tight end, with a creative young offensive coach. I really love the potential of this unit. The left side of the offensive line is pretty solid with Christian Darrisaw at left tackle, Ezra Cleveland at left guard, and then you throw in Garrett Bradbury at center. That's a solid group. But the right side scares me a bit. I think if this offense falters a little bit this year, it could be because of the right side of that offensive line. So if they're able to hold up front consistently throughout the season, there's no reason this group shouldn't be a top 5 scoring offense. We could see a few bumps and bruises at the beginning of the year, kind of getting adjusted to O'Connell as a full-time head coach for the first time. But I think this is a top 5 offense in the league this year. Defense, this is a unit that has a lot of big-name players, and I think is in for a rebound this season. I think part of their failures with this team last year, they started out really slow, but over the second half of the year, they played well, the whole team. But that defense was really banged up. They were missing a lot of guys throughout the year. And I think Mike Zimmer's coaching style and just his overall nature, he's kind of one of those old school rah-rah football type guys that might have got to some of these Vikings guys, and they might not have wanted to play for him anymore. You bring in some new blood there with a new coaching staff. I think it's a great chance for a rebound with this unit. Have a really nice pass rush duo with Za'Darius Smith rushing from outside backer and Daniil Hunter at defensive end. Really like Dalvin Tomlinson and Harrison Phillips on the defensive line, two really good run defenders there. And then a really good linebacker duo with Eric Kendricks, one of the top, probably five, if not top 10, top 10, if not top 5 guys in the NFL at the linebacker spot. And then you bring in the new addition of Jordan Hicks, where he's battled some health injuries throughout his career, but when he's on the field, he's been a really productive player. So really good veteran safety in Harrison Smith, one of the better safeties of the past decade in the NFL. And then former All-Pro and Patrick Peterson. He's still a pretty solid player at this age, but he's just rock solid veteran, just a leader. He's seen everything you can, matched up against all the great receivers. He's just a really good presence for some of these young, talented guys in the secondary. That I'm a fan of as well. With second-round pick Andrew Booth Jr., you got Cam Dantzler, who's been in the league a few years now, still a young corner. Lewis Seen, the safety out of Georgia. So I really like the potential of this group, and I think they're flying under the radar, and they're another reason why I like this team to be that NFC North champion and get that 2 seed in the NFC this year. We head to the head coach, first-year head coach Kevin O'Connell, former OC with the Los Angeles Rams, Super Bowl champs last year, so he knows what it takes to win the Super Bowl. He's been around a lot of good offensive players before, and he knows how to get the most out of them. That's the most thing I'm excited about with him. We'll see what he does with his defensive coaching staff, how they're able to navigate and kind of what scheme they'll be running. I'm interested to see what that defense looks like this year, but I'm really excited about the offense thanks to O'Connell, and I think he has a really good shot at winning like Coach of the Year this year. If he's able to come in and get this record that I predict, I think he'll be up in the running as the first-year head coach. My breakout player, tight end Irv Smith Jr., really talented guy. When he's on the field, he's produced. He's only played 2 seasons in the NFL, missed all of last year with a torn meniscus, and he's already battling a thumb injury throughout training camp. It sounds like he will be ready for week 1, but he's a guy, loads of potential. I think Kevin O'Connell is going to really find a lot of ways to use him in this offense for Kirk Cousins, and he's in for a big year. Watch out for Irv Smith Jr. I continue to say buy stock in him. And then 2 games to watch for this team. One for all these teams, we'll do 1 divisional and 1 non-divisional game. The non-divisional game will be week 2 at the Eagles. These are 2 teams I think coming into the year within the building as well as the media have playoff expectations. So it'll kind of be a good measuring stick game, I think, for both of them. And then the other game, the divisional game that I'm looking forward to for the Vikings this year, week 17 at the Packers. I think that has a good chance to be for the division title. So really bullish, I think you could say I am this year on the Minnesota Vikings, and I think they're a dark horse team to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl this year. 12-5, 5-1 in the division, and the number 2 overall seed. We go to the number 2 team in the division now, finishing in second place, and that's the Green Bay Packers, not too far behind Minnesota. Got them going 11-6, 4-2 in the division, and that's good enough to get the 5 seed. When you look at the offense, obviously headlined by Aaron Rodgers, but I don't know if it's possible that this offense can remain at the level that they have the past 2 years with Rodgers winning back-to-back MVPs. That's going to be really hard to replicate, and most importantly, it's because Davante Adams is gone. Rodgers, like I said, has won back-to-back MVPs, has been arguably the best player in the NFL over that span. There's been guys like Aaron Donald that you could argue as well, stuff like that. Tom Brady has been amazing the past few years, but Rodgers has won the award back-to-back, so can't really say much else about that. But over those 2 years, Davante Adams has had a combined 238 catches, 29 receiving touchdowns, and 2,927 receiving yards. Those are elite numbers. I'm pretty sure he leads the league in all those categories over that time. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who's been a pretty good deep threat for them as well over the past few years, left. So that leaves you with a receiving core of Allen Lazard, who has been a pretty solid player when given opportunities and when on the field. Randall Cobb, who's past his prime. Young guy in Amari Rodgers, who I'm high on. I think he could be a productive NFL player. And then rookie Christian Watson as the main receiving threats. You have a really solid offensive line as well. A solid tight end in Robert Tonyan, who is coming back from injury, so I'm not sure if he'll be ready for week 1. And in my opinion, the best running back duo in the NFC with AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones. A really good thunder-lightning combination there. So as long as Aaron Rodgers is healthy, the offense is going to be fine, but I don't think they can replicate that same production that they've had these past few years. I think they're just going to take a step back because nobody is going to be able to replicate that production by Davante. It's going to have to be like a team effort trying to fill those catches, yards, and touchdowns up. But we're going to have to – that's kind of a wait-and-see thing, see who steps up and who really emerges as Aaron Rodgers' go-to target. I'm just a little bit worried that without an elite, true wide receiver one on this team, that they're not going to be as effective as we've seen them over the past few seasons. Then we go to the defense. This might be the best defense of the Rodgers era, and I might say the best defense, not just in the NFC, but in the entire NFL. They have no holes at any level at this defense, and they have high-level players, all-pro potential guys everywhere. They did lose Zadarius Smith, really good pass rusher over the past few years for Green Bay to division rival Minnesota, which is a big hit. But still, they're stacked everywhere else. You got Kenny Clark, Dean Lowry. You went out and picked up DJ Reed. You got Preston Smith all across the defensive line. Doesn't get much better than that for four guys on the line. You bring in Rashawn Gary as an outside backer pass rusher. He had double-digit sacks last year. He was my prediction last year for my breakout player, and that kind of proved to be true. And then Devondre Campbell was one of the best linebackers in the league last year as well. He was a really good pickup in free agency. Then you add two Georgia players from that great defense last year that won the national title, in Devontae Wyatt and Quay Walker, Wyatt being a defensive tackle and Quay Walker being a linebacker, two guys who should be able to step in and contribute from day one. So that defense got even better this offseason, even with losing Smith, I think. And then you get to the secondary, which might be the best unit on that defense, and that's saying a lot given the high praise that I already have about the players on this unit, with Jair Alexander and Eric Stokes forming arguably the best quarterback duo in the NFC. And then you got Rasul Douglas, who's emerged as a playmaker and has been able to convert a lot of defense into offense and force a lot of turnovers in his time there. So then you also look at the safety duo. It keeps going with Adrian Amos and Darnell Savage at safety. I think this is the best defense in the NFC, maybe the league. So if people are able to step up and fill that production left by Davante Adams, there's no reason this team won't be in the running for the NFC North title and the number one seed again. But I'm just a little too worried about the gaping hole left by Davante Adams. But this defense is elite, and I think we could see this team still with Rodgers maybe switch the identity a little bit and run the football a little bit more and see if that helps them advance in the playoffs after two early exits the past few years. Head coach Matt LaFleur, not much to say about him, but the dude's just a winner. 13 wins, I believe, in both of his first two seasons in the NFL. Just came up short both times at home in the playoffs, once against Tom Brady and once last year against the 49ers. So this is a head coach who's had a lot of success in his young NFL career. I'm excited to see what he can do going forward in year three. But he needs to have some playoff success, I think, or the fans might start getting on him despite all the regular season success. With Aaron Rodgers, your kind of Super Bowl window is limited, I think, for another 3-4 years. You got to hope to get one out of him and not limit his career, which has 4 MVPs to only just one Super Bowl. My breakout player is going to be rookie wide receiver Christian Watson out of North Dakota State. I think he is going to be the guy in the position best to try and fill that Davante Adams role, and he's going to get a lot of opportunities from day one. And then 2 games to watch. We got Week 3 at the Bucs. Should be 2 of the top 2 teams in the NFC this year. And then we got Week 17 versus the Vikings. Like I was saying with the Vikings earlier, that game should be for competing for the division crown down the stretch. So that'll be a fun game to watch. We get to the third place team. I think that's going to be America's darling for this year. It could be America's team, and that's the Detroit Lions. I could see a lot of people just rallying around them because of Hard Knocks. I have them finishing in third, and I have them going 7-10. 2-4 in the division. That's not good enough to make the playoffs, but it's a team that I'm kind of optimistic about, and we'll get into the reasoning why, starting with the offense. A unit that has potential to raise some eyebrows across the NFL. I'm a big believer that if you have strong offensive and defensive line play, you're going to be competitive in games. And I think that we'll get to the defense a little bit, but I think this offensive line is a top 5 group. And if you combine that with capable running backs, and you look at Detroit, they certainly have that with DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams. You're going to be in games and have a chance to win at the end of every day. As long as you're handling the line of scrimmage, you're going to be in football games. We've seen that with the Philadelphia Eagles over the past few years. They're never really horrible because they are always strong in the trenches. So the Lions have a top 5 offensive line and a really strong duo at running back with DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams. I think Swift emerges this year as a top-level running back and puts the league on notice. Then it comes down to really the quarterback position with Jared Goff. As I talked about with the NFC episode pressure's on a lot of quarterbacks, and I think Jared Goff, this is his shot. This is his year to prove, all right, I can be the man going forward in Detroit, or am I just the bridge quarterback, and are they going to use their draft capital to go up and get one of those quarterbacks last year? Or if the Lions have another really bad year, they're going to be picking in that top 5 range. They're going to be having ample opportunities to get one of those young quarterbacks, which is supposed to be a really strong class next year. So can Goff be anything more than a game manager? Can he take care of the football? He's thrown 21 interceptions combined in the last 2 seasons. Only threw 8 last year, but 21 the last 2 seasons. Not terrible, not great, kind of in between. You want to keep that number low if you're the Detroit Lions this year, because I think this is going to be a run-first team that's looking to play some low-scoring games. This team has an intriguing group of playmakers, though. A lot of guys on the perimeter who could make some noise this year, I think. You look at TJ Hawkinson, I think he's the headliner of that pass-catching group at tight end. They went alongside DJ Chark, who, when healthy, has been a productive player so far during his time in Jacksonville. I think he's a good addition to the offense. Amon-Ra St. Brown really came on at the end of his rookie year last year. And then you get first-round pick Jamison Williams in the fold. I don't know when he'll be back. The Lions already announced he won't be playing week 1. But if you're able to get him back around like week 6, week 7, coming back from that torn ACL, he adds a whole nother dimension to that offense as the field stretcher. And then reverting back to Jared Goff, in 2018, he threw 32 touchdowns, nearly 4,700 yards, and took the Rams to the Super Bowl. If he's able to throw for 4,500 yards and 30 touchdowns this year to go with that running game, that really strong offensive line play, I think this team could flirt with a playoff spot thanks to all those pieces around him. There's a lot of talent and a lot of high draft picks on that team. So if the offensive line stays healthy and pans out, and Jared Goff is more than just a game manager, I think this team has the potential to get upwards of 8 or 9 wins and flirt with that number 7 seed and get into the last spot in the NFC for the wild card, potentially. That's if everything shakes right. Everything goes poorly, this team could be down picking around number 1 overall again. So it is a big year. I think it kind of comes down to how good Jared Goff actually is. But then the defense is also a major question mark. That they are the major worry of for this team. With me, besides Jared Goff, they have some solid foundational pieces for the rebuild, kind of like I was talking about with the Giants, where some guys that I like going forward for this team. When they have a few guys who are just like kind of placeholders, I think. You look at the secondary, that's very weak. But if former top 5 pick Jeff Okudah can bounce back from his Achilles injury, as well as his rough rookie season, and take a leap as a player that could prove to be another one of those foundational pieces and be a top-level corner. He was a number 3 overall pick. You got to be a top-level corner at that level. That could really improve this defense. Hutchinson, the number 2 overall pick this year, interested to see what he brings to the table in the NFL. Longtime defensive tackle Michael Brockers, Aleem McNeil, who was a 3rd-round pick, I believe, last year, had a solid year. He slides in as a starter. And Charles Harris has kind of rebounded from his poor start to his career with the Miami Dolphins, and he's kind of formed into a pretty solid pass rusher with the Lions. So that's a pretty good group. But then the linebacker unit, not very strong, nothing really to write home about there. If this team really comes down to Jared Goff and the overall performance of the defense, if they're able to hold their own and doesn't give up big performances like they did last year, where we saw them give up 44 points to the Eagles, they have 4 games against 2 most likely really high-level offenses in Minnesota and Green Bay. If they're giving up 30, 40 points, this team is going to struggle there, because I don't think with Goff they're built to win shootouts. But like I said, if Goff plays well and the defense is able to hold their own, this is a team that I could see getting 9 wins and maybe even that 17 and getting into the playoffs. Might be a little bit too optimistic on this bunch, but if you look at that roster top to bottom, there's a lot of high level players and high investment draft picks. So this is a team that does have some talent. It's kind of just about putting it all together. You look at the head coach, Dan Campbell. Jerry's out on him. He's a bit of a nutcase, if we're being honest, but it seems like his players really love him and the guys really respond to him. We'll see, X's and O's wise, how good of a coach he is. I really like the coaching staff, though. Watching Hard Knocks, they have a bunch of coaches with NFL playing experience, and I think that really helps when it comes to, teaching the game and just, being in the players' shoes before being able to relate to those guys. Breakout player, DeAndre Swift. If you listen to my fantasy episode or future betting episode, I'm all in on Swift this year. I took that over. I would take that over 850.5 rushing yards. He's a dual threat guy. He just has to stay on the field. He's missed games over his first 2 years in the league, but when he's on the field, he's really productive, and I hope they really let the training wheels off him and kind of let him loose this year and be that main running back and just use Williams as more of the complementary piece. 2 games to watch. Week 1 versus the Eagles. I think that's a really good game to set the tempo for their season. They have a Eagles team coming in who went to the playoffs last year, has playoff expectations going into the year this year as well. You're able to beat them at home after they beat you 44-6 last year in Detroit. That could be a good start to your season, really kickstart a potential playoff run. And then week 12 versus the Bills on Thanksgiving. That's another really exciting game. Bills coming in as a Super Bowl favorite. And then I left out their division game, but the division game that I'm looking for is that Bears one at home. I don't have the week in front of me right now, but that's a game where if you're Detroit, you have to find a way to win that football game and knock off this lowly Bears team that I'm expecting. We'll get into the lowly Bears now. The 4th place team in the NFC North, last place. If you've heard any of my other football, preseason kind of podcast, I've really harped on the Bears this year. Got them going 3-14. I think I had them going 3-14 last year as well. I just don't like the direction of this franchise right now. I have them going 1-5 in the division. I think that one division win is their home game against the Lions. I have them finishing in last place in the NFC. And actually, last place in the NFL, they would get the number 1 overall pick if my predictions come true. The worst group of skill players and offense, I think, in the entire NFL. I really like Justin Fields as a prospect and as a player going forward, but the Bears haven't given him much to work with, and I think are setting him up to fail. If my predictions are correct and the Bears do have the number 1 overall pick, that could lead them to taking a new quarterback like either C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young at the top and moving Justin Fields. So it's pretty crazy to already be saying that as he only enters his 2nd year, and he didn't even start the full year last year, and I'm already talking about maybe a new quarterback going in there. And it's no fault of his own. I just think he's been given not ideal tools to be a successful player in his NFL career at this stage. The offensive line really worries with me with guys who have just been a bunch of journeymen around the NFL. Riley Reif, a really solid right tackle, has played in the league for a while. That's really the only positive on that offensive line. I'm just worried that they're going to get Fields killed and he's going to be constantly taking a lot of hits. And that's just the biggest way, in my opinion, to derail a young quarterback's potential in the NFL and his development. The running back duo of David Montgomery and 2nd-year player Khalil Herbert, a running back last year out of Virginia Tech, who turned some heads when given some opportunities. That's a really nice duo. And this is a division that has really good running back play. We look at the top with Dalvin Cook, Alexander Madison, then A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams, and then David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert. This is a really good group of running backs in this division. I think you can make a pretty fair argument that it's the best group of overall running backs out of any division in the NFL. If they're productive, though, this running back duo, and they can run the ball, I'll have a little bit more optimism. Maybe the team flirts with at most 6 wins. I think 6 is their ceiling with this team. But the lack of offensive line play doesn't give me much optimism for this running back duo to have some rushing success. Justin Fields, as well, with his athleticism, can be a plus runner, but I don't know how much he's going to be running just based off of the amount of hits I think he's going to take. He could be getting the ball out quickly. Not really like a lot of design runs, but maybe like some ad-lib plays where he's using his leg to do that poor offensive line play. Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet are good pieces at wide receiver and tight end, respectively, going forward for this team. But outside of them, nothing to scare opposing defenses. They went out and traded for N'Keal Harry from the Patriots, a former first-rounder. I thought, okay, maybe a change of scenery, more opportunities, like a better young quarterback in Justin Fields, or I think a guy who has some more talent as an overall passer than Mac Jones. I thought that would maybe be a good opportunity for him. He already got like high ankle sprain and just got surgery, so who knows when he'll be back. That could be another lost transaction. I think if you're watching Bears games this year, especially on the offensive side of the ball, be aware you might want to puke. I think they're going to be a really, really poor team. We turn our attention to the defense now. Maybe this unit can make this team a little bit more competitive, but I don't really know. Robert Quinn's still a really productive pass rusher, was one of the leading sack getters in the entire NFL last year. But the rest of the defensive line's worrisome. Akeem Hicks, longtime stalwart there, left. He's in Tampa Bay now. Roquan Smith requested a trade, and that's never good when an all-pro linebacker or an all-pro at any kind of level of your team is unable to be on the field due to a contract dispute and wanting to get traded. The young corner, Jalen Johnson, really good. I really like him going forward out of Utah a few years ago. Eddie Jackson got paid like an all-pro safety, which he was in the first few years of his career. He's kind of downgraded, I guess you could say, a bit. He hasn't really panned out as much as you would hope with that contract, but he's still a pretty solid safety. Tavon Young is a proven, experienced NFL corner. The secondary on paper can be a pretty solid unit, maybe the best overall unit on this team, but not much room, not a lot of optimism with this group. But you got to hope Matt Eberflus, who came in, who's a defensive-minded guy, can get more out of this defense. But we'll go to the transition. That's a good transition into the talking about the head coach now with Matt Eberflus. He was my least favorite head coaching hire, a guy who I wouldn't have hired. I'm still confused as why his name was kind of floated around. The Colts defense over the years has been good, but they've always kind of fell short. And I think there's a lot more qualified and better coaching candidates out there. I think that the direction of this team this year, just the lack of talent, that's going to harm his development as a head coach as well. I think everyone in Chicago understands that this is a rebuild, but if shit hits the fan with this team and he has a really poor first year, it wouldn't be surprising to me if he's a one and done. I don't think he's an NFL coach. I think he's better NFL head coach. Excuse me. I think he's just more qualified and better suited to just be a defensive coordinator. And then my 2 games to watch for this team, week 1 versus the 49ers. First game of the new era with new head coach, new GM. Justin Fields' first year as a full-time starter versus the 49ers, a team that I'm expecting to be a competitor in the NFC this year. And then week 10 versus the Lions, that's a good chance to get a win at home, I think, especially in front of your home crowd against a division rival. That would be kind of a positive light, I guess you could say, in what I'm expecting to be a poor season. So just to run through that real quick, we got the Vikings finishing in first, going 12-5, getting the 2 seed. The Packers going 11-6, getting the 5 seed in the wild card. The Lions going 7-10, missing the playoffs, and the Bears going 3-14, missing the playoffs. But that'll do it for this episode of the Beef Up Front podcast here on Pick Swap Media. Next episode will be the NFC South for our divisional preview, so make sure to stay tuned to that. Like, subscribe, follow all our social medias, and we will talk soon.